The Flood Risk Report is the document that summarizes the data developed for the RiskMAP project as well as provide data regarding mitigation. This module will focus on the sections of the Flood Risk Report and the data therein. The goal of this report is to help inform and enable communities and tribes to take action to reduce flood risk. Possible users of this report include local elected officials, floodplain managers, community planners, emergency managers, public works officials, and other special interests. There are 4 sections that are included in the Flood Risk Report, including the introduction section that describes flood risk and provides a summary of the flood risk products. Section 2 explains the methodology for the flood risk analysis results. Section 3 provides a summary of the risk analysis results for the entire study area and each community within the study area. Section 4 provides information on ways to reduce risk, including potential mitigation actions and grant funding opportunities. It is not enough to simply identify where flooding may occur. Just because one knows where a flood occurs does not mean they will know the risk of flooding. The most common method for determining flood risk, also referred to as vulnerability, is to identify the probability of flooding and the consequences of flooding. In other words, flood risk or vulnerability equals probability times consequences, where probability is the likelihood of occurrence and consequences are the estimated impacts associated with the occurrence. The probability of a flood is the likelihood that a flood will occur. The probability of flooding can be changed based on physical, environmental, and/or engineering factors. Factors affecting the probability that a flood will impact an area range from changing weather patterns to the existence of mitigation projects. The ability to assess the probability of a flood and the level of accuracy for that assessment are also influenced by modeling methodology advancements, better knowledge, and longer periods of record for the water body in question. An overview of methodology has been provided previously. The Flood Risk Report gives an overview of the flood risk datasets, risk assessment information, and areas of mitigation interest. Section 3 of the report contains a summary of the results from the watershed-based study and community-specific results. The flood risk map is located in this section and provides visual representation of the factors in the watershed that may contribute to and/or reduce flooding risk. The flood risk map will be discussed in more detail later in this module. This is a summary of the results and does not represent all of the data that can be generated from the flood risk database. The following information can be found in Section 3 of the report: the flood risk map, overview of communities in the watershed study area, and information regarding increases and decrease in floodplain area measured in square miles, hazardous estimated loss information, and, if included in the project, areas of mitigation interest. This slide demonstrates results examples from Section 3 in the Flood Risk Report. This data provides each community in the watershed an overview of the results of the risk map analyses. For example, the potential losses for residential and commercial properties as well as the potential business disruption costs may be estimated. Community-specific information, such as geographic information, major interstate information, historical data, community population, % of the community population in the watershed, and % of land are in the watershed may also be depicted. Areas of mitigation interest may include dams, levees, stream flow pinch points, significant land use changes, past claims hotspots, and areas of mitigation successes. Section 4 provides information regarding the opportunities for mitigation, which provides a critical foundation on which to reduce loss of life and property by avoiding or lessening the impact of hazard events. This creates safer communities and facilitates resiliency by enabling communities to return to normal function as quickly as possible after a hazard event. Preventative measures, property protection measures, natural resource protection activities, structural mitigation projects, public education and awareness activities, and emergency service measures are discussed in the report. FEMA has many programs for mitigating risks. The Hazard Mitigation Grant Program is activated after Presidential Disaster Declaration and provides funds on a sliding scale formula based on a percentage of the total federal assistance for a disaster for long-term mitigation measures to reduce vulnerability to natural hazards. The goal of the Flood Mitigation Assistance Program is to reduce or eliminate claims against the National Flood Insurance Program. Pre-disaster mitigation is a national competitive program focused on mitigation project and planning activities that address multiple natural hazards. The repetitive flood claims programs reduce flood claims against the National Flood Insurance Program through flood mitigation. Properties must be currently NFIP insured and have at least one NFIP claim. The goal of the Severe Repetitive Loss Program is to reduce or eliminate the long-term risk of flood damage to severe repetitive loss residential structures currently insured under the National Flood Insurance Program. Several additional agencies, including the Army Corps of Engineers, National Resource Conservation Service, U.S. Geological Survey, and others have specialists on staff and can offer further information on flood hazard mitigation. These are just a few of the federal programs that can be leveraged for mitigation projects. For more information, contact the Kentucky National Flood Insurance Program Coordinator and the Kentucky State Hazard Mitigation Officer as state-level resources of information and assistance, which vary among different states. The overall purpose of the Flood Risk Report is to provide a summary of the flood risk in the watershed and provide community-specific information that can be shared with the public and officials. This data can be used in other planning activities, including hazard mitigation planning. The Flood Risk Report can be used to increase general flood risk awareness. Risk definitions and causes provide a basic understanding of common FEMA terms for the public. Risk reduction techniques and mitigation practices provide guidance on the possible risk reductions and opportunities for local governments and the public. Community and project level results are summarized by community data that's available so communities and the general public can access a quick summary of flood risks and data for the community of interest. The watershed or project area summary of data is provided so that communities and the public have a greater understanding of flood risks and data available for the watershed as a whole. The report can be used to provide information to augment or enhance other efforts. The Flood Risk Report can contain data that can be used to update other local planning efforts, including local hazard mitigation planning, local emergency management planning, and local master planning and building development. The Flood Risk Map provides a visual summary of the watershed so that local officials and the public have a better understanding as to how neighboring communities may contribute to reduce flood risks and increase the likelihood of communication between communities in the watershed. This map will not replace a community's flood insurance rate map. It is an accompaniment to the firm for a better holistic understanding of the community's flood risk. The Flood Risk Map illustrates the Flood Risk Project based data reflecting community boundaries, major roads, and streamlines, potential losses that include both the 2010 flood average annualized loss study supplemented with new HAZUS runs for areas with new or updated flood modeling, new flood risk project areas, a bar chart summarizing community per capita loss, and graphics and text that promote access and usage of additional data available through the Flood Risk Dataset, Flood Insurance Rate Map, and National Flood Hazard Layer, and viewers, desktop or FEMA website viewers. This information can be used to assist in flood risk project level planning as well as for developing mitigation actions within each jurisdiction located within the Flood Risk Project. The Flood Risk Map typically contains the following data: base data such as community boundaries, major roads and streamlines, flood data such as rivers and streams, restudy data, and the new special flood hazard area, composite HAZUS flood risk categorized from very low to very high, and areas of mitigation interest such as hotspots, pinch points, dams, levees, and development. The data for the Flood Risk Map is located in the Flood Risk Database. The map can be used to illustrate flooding issues in the watershed as well as successful mitigation efforts. The HUC-AID approach is beneficial for communities to understand the downstream and upstream impacts of areas outside of their community. The results can be interpreted so that there's a better understanding of the watershed.